Okay, awesome. Well, then let's go ahead and give this thing a shot. I'm going to be doing this just by myself. Last time I did this was actually with my wife helping field questions and whatnot. So today will be more interesting with me just in the room reading this stuff to myself. So let's see here. Uh, yeah, this is the first time I've done a live video since February of 2017. So it's been a long time. So yeah, feel free to ask questions if you like. It's great to see 11 people in here already. That's really cool. I apologize to all of you right from the start. My voice is a little bit rough because I got back from BGG Con last week, and you talk over a lot of people, and it tends to be really bad for the throat. Okay, cool. Shannon Berry has a question. They said, "Are you in this BGG Secret Santa or any other gift exchanges this year?" No, the short answer to that is no. I've always contemplated doing the BGG Secret Santa. It's a really cool idea where I'm pretty sure you sign up for it and then they match you with somebody and you send something across the world. And I think you can specify if you want to be international or just within your country. But honestly, for the last 6 years anyway, I've had enough games, and so I never really felt like I wanted to actually participate in that because I feel like I have enough games already, and so it does sound like fun. But as far as other gift exchanges, no, I'm not against them. I don't happen to be in any local ones. Next up, Jesse Hulk, you have a question. Are you going to PAX Unplugged? No, I'm not. That is, I think, next weekend. And as I just said, I was at BGG Con last week, and that convention holds a special place in my heart. This was my 6th year going to that one, and I just can't really rationalize going to 2 conventions that close together with just 1 week apart. It's just expensive to fly. I live in California, so obviously PAX Unplugged is on the East Coast, which is a pretty expensive flight overall. So no, I won't be making it. All right. Board Games with Nirmas. You had the question, what games can we expect playthroughs of coming soon? Well, for that, you can check out my update vlogs that I do once a month. I do talk about the games that I'm planning on coming out, but of course things get a little bit shifted around. I can tell you that I was just looking at my schedule this morning, and it looks like I will be doing a 2-player playthrough for Gaia Project, also Glenmore 2. Both of those won Patreon polls. I finally got a copy of Trismegistus. That officially has arrived. It's in the house. It's still in shrink, but I am planning on putting out a sponsored playthrough of that one as soon as I can. And then, of course, I'm doing Patreon polls for this coming month, so I don't know what those are going to be just yet. That's pretty much everything I have that I know about at this point. Obviously, with the holidays and whatnot coming up, I have to be careful. I don't want to overcommit. Let's see here. Next question. What's your dearest life goal, personal or game related? Well, that is a pretty big question from All Plays a Lot. Dearest life goal. I mean, actually, it's pretty simple. I just want to be happy. That might be a bit of a cop-out answer, but my goal has always been to just put myself in a situation where I'm happiest. That's part of the reason why I am chasing this YouTube thing because board games make me so happy, and my old jobs didn't necessarily do that. It's just one of the many things I do in my life to try and focus on what makes me happy, but might not necessarily be the best thing for overall success in a traditional sense. Obviously, I would be, I think, making a lot more money if I did other jobs than doing this, and sometimes I sit there thinking, is this going to be a problem for me in the long term? If I do this for 10 years and then want to switch out to a different career, what's my resume going to look like? But either way, I guess, like I said, my goals are just, I try to be just happiness focused. And if things don't make me happy, I try to either change them or get rid of them if that's possible. Obviously, it's a very broad subject. All right, let's see here. Next up, let's see, we have Curtis Melifste. By the way, I am kind of focusing and squinting my eyes because the video is being captured by my MacBook Pro, and it's like across the table so that it has a good frame. I used a webcam for this a couple years ago, but after messing around with it for 2 hours this morning, I just could not get it to look not terrible. So we're using the laptop, and I'm just kind of reaching across the table. Anyway, to the question, do you have any thoughts on the new Awaken Realms Kickstarter Great Wall? This is an easy question to answer. I don't know anything about that. I don't even know what Awaken Realms is. I mean, it sounds vaguely familiar, but I think that's just a part of board gaming that I'm not directly in contact with, really. So sorry about that. I don't have anything to say there. Yeah, Niramas mentions that, happy about Gaia Project being a playthrough that's coming in. That one has been on some polls for the contributing producer level Patreon supporters of the channel for a few months, and it's just barely missed a couple times. I love Guy Project, so I'm pretty excited to do it. I know it's going to be a bit of a time commitment, but it's a really cool game, so it's going to be fun to showcase that one for sure. All right, moving on. Question. Oh, okay, so Keith Polnick asked if I have any help with my playthroughs with making decisions for the AI players. The short answer to that is it's almost always me. There have been a few videos now, probably like 5 maybe, that my wife Jessica has helped me out with just off screen, helping to make decisions for. One of them, actually a couple of them, had to do with games that were really hard to simulate, with simultaneous player interaction and trying to get into each other's minds. But usually the reason Jess has helped me out is because I'm just behind, and I could really use another person in the room to help me with decisions to make the video process quicker. In general, that's not the case, but Jessica is amazing, and she helps to support me in a lot of ways. And one way, again, a few times, is to help me out here. Next up, Jordi Janssen says, have you ever considered live streaming playthroughs with friends or solo? I have considered it for about 10 seconds. Live streaming is a totally different beast than what I do for my playthroughs, and I think there are some people out there who do a really good job with that, and I don't think that would be me. My playthroughs take, anywhere from 5 to 10 hours to record, and that's because my style involves really trying to think things through, and I guess if I had people around the table, when I've seen live playthroughs of board games, it just seems like it's very personality focused. People want to have banter so that it's interesting, and also, by and large, it seems difficult to really focus in onto what's going on with live playthroughs. I think part of that's because people are actually playing against each other, and I am just playing against myself, and so that means I can kind of cultivate an experience, like almost a narrative as we go through the game, that might not necessarily always be what actually pops up in every playthrough. So, also just logistically, that sounds hard. The reason I started this channel in the first place is because all my friends have day jobs, and my other job doing events left me alone on like a Tuesday. So this is something I can do when everyone else is occupied. So the logistics of trying to get that together, and then of course having to completely rebuild a studio and everything, I just think it's something that other people are doing a very good job with, and so I can stay in my safe space here, that's comfortable and something I really know how to do. All right, moving on. Resi Larishu says, the most important of them all, how am I feeling? Oh, well, thank you. Overall, I'm feeling pretty good. I mean, it's a complicated question. Obviously, my voice isn't super great because of the convention that just happened. I'm feeling a little bit of stress about the amount of work that I do have coming up with John Gets Games and my other job. I just got back from BGG Con, and I'm finding myself a little bit behind for some other reasons that I don't need to go into right here. And I'll make it all work, but stress is obviously something I have to keep in mind. But in general, things are going good, and I'm excited for some of the videos that I'm putting out next. I'm also excited for the holidays and all that kind of stuff coming up. But either way, thank you for asking. Let's see here. Keith Polnick says, they did a game called Nemesis. Awakened Realms is the company that did Lords of Hellas, Tainted Grail, Nemesis, Aetherfields. Okay, well, thank you for letting me know about that. I've heard of Lords of Hellas before, and actually Tainted Grail, they reached out to me, now that you say this, about making a video for that one. And I took a quick look at it and decided it was probably just a little bit too much for me to handle with my playthrough style. So I guess I do. I have interacted with that before, but I interact with a lot of publishers, and I just kind of forgot about that. No, I don't think yeah, I don't think I'm really going to be going with them on that. So right here, David M says, question, when you teach games, do you give strategy tips at the same time? Can you give some tips while on teaching games in general? Yes, to the first question for sure. Yeah, I'll try to answer both of these questions. As far as when I'm playing with friends, strategy tips. If I know the game pretty well, or at least if I've played it a couple times and I'm teaching new players, if I know that I've stumbled into something really bad, then I will mention that. If it's the kind of thing where it's like, after one round, it's really easy to spend all of your money, and then the next 2 rounds are going to be awful, I'll mention that. I'll say, maybe be a little bit more careful with your money. It's, harder to get money than you might think in this particular game. But that's pretty much the extent of what I say. I mean, occasionally I'll say something like, ooh, last game I did this thing, this strategy, and I came in second or first. So this game I'm going to do something else. But that's more like me telling other people what my plans are, as opposed to really telling them what to do. As far as tips on teaching games, well, honestly, I feel like the best way to teach a game is by just going through the flow of the game itself. And that's kind of what I do in my playthroughs. When I'm teaching friends, I obviously don't play the game as I'm teaching it. But if there is a player aid or something like that, I usually find that and I teach the game based off of that. Starting with the first round of setup, and then what's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and I just kind of go in order. And if there's a phase like maybe phase 2 in some game that's particularly complicated and it really interacts with phase 5, then I might say we'll get back to phase 2 and let's talk about phase 3 now, so that this makes more sense later on. But in general, I don't have any like super deep thoughts on this matter. I haven't really paid that much attention, honestly, to how I teach games. I've been doing it for a decade, and I've kind of fallen into this style of teaching. So if you have trouble with teaching games, then I definitely say if there is a player aid, use that as a structure for teaching the game. And I think it's also important to ask for questions, not too often, but especially after going over something pretty complicated, read the room, see if people are furrowing their eyebrows or if they're nodding, and play off of that. Because if it looks like people aren't getting it, then maybe they aren't getting it, and maybe see if you can pull out a question or two. All right, moving on. We have another question. Did you watch the Dice Tower Live Marathon? No. That's a pretty simple question. If I'm being honest, I don't actually consume live board game content. Like I said, some people are doing some really good board game live content. Heavy Cardboard and obviously Paul Grogan with Gaming Rules do a very similar style there. And I think I've watched a couple of those afterwards when it's posted on the internet to try and learn the rules or something like that. But I just don't really have I don't have the interest in that style of playthrough. Honestly, the best type of playthroughs, in my personal opinion, not for everyone, but for me, is the type that I make. So Slicker Drips, Tom Heath, who does the Slicker Drips channel, he does playthroughs that I love. I just like hearing all of the complicated thoughts, and I like having everything edited out. I just don't really like watching other people playing games, I guess, if that makes sense. David M has a question. They said, did you go to Essen? No, I did not go to Essen this year. That is the biggest board game convention in the year, technically Essen Spiel. I went last year and the year before, and this year it seemed like it was just one too many conventions. Again, I live in California, so Germany is a very long way away. The cheapest ticket I have found in the past couple years is about $800. And on top of that, you have hotel room fees, and then you have the opportunity cost of just not being here, being productive. So it's a lot of things to consider. I do hope to go again next year because it's an amazing convention, but it's not something that I can necessarily justify going to every single year going forward. All right, next up, Shannon Berry asks, what's something you're really proud of in your production that's completely invisible to the average watcher? Ooh, okay, I'm going to say something really minor for this. Maybe really proud of is an overstatement, but I really try to pay attention to subtle, tiny things when I'm editing the videos. Is my hand on screen a little bit too long as I'm shuffling up some cards? Well, I'll try to make that a little bit quicker. Or, what are the jump cuts like? I really try to pay attention to having a good pause between one thought to the next. There's something that's completely invisible to people that they probably don't even notice I do. Sometimes when I'm filming these things, I get to the end of a thought and I pull my hand off screen and I immediately put my hand back on screen to adjust the camera like a dummy. And there's like half a second pause before there's stuff on screen. So that's not a long enough pause to go from one sentence to the next, in my opinion. So what I have to do is I have to find a frame where my hand's just barely off screen. I freeze the frame in my editing software. I then expand out that frozen frame for, I don't know, 3/4 of a second or something like that, and then leave it there. So it looks like the scene ended a little bit later on than it did. No one will ever know when I'm doing it, but I spent 10 seconds doing that, and I probably end up doing that like 5 to 6 times for every single video. So it's not necessarily something thing I'm most proud of, but it's something I think of sometimes when I'm doing it. I'm like, no one's ever going to notice that you're doing this. This is probably not even necessary, but that's just a silly little thing I do. As far as most proud of, I don't know, maybe just the ridiculous amount of time I spend thinking about how the game is going to go, planning like 2-3 turns in the future, and trying to make sure if that makes sense for all of the different players, if it's showing the game off well and all that stuff. So that is obviously also not seen because that hits the cutting room floor. All right, next up, Lukas Peters says, if you don't want to live stream your playthroughs, would you consider streaming yourself while recording one of your videos? A D&D content creator I know does this, and it's quite interesting. I have actually briefly considered doing this. There was a time about a year and a half ago where I was having trouble with, motivation and all that, and part of me was like, maybe if I put a camera up in my studio that's just like constantly streaming whatever I'm doing in my studio when I'm working, that will motivate me to stop procrastinating because anybody at any point in time could watch me. And that was just a silly idea that I never really honestly considered. Realistically, I think it would be a bad idea for a few different reasons. One is because you just watch me staring at the board for 8 to 10 minutes at a time sometimes. The second one is honestly you'll probably just hear me swearing a lot. Obviously I never swear in the final videos for this channel because I just don't really think it's necessary for my type of content. But as a person, I do swear a lot, and when I mess takes up, when I flub some words, sometimes not the nicest things are said. So it's a fun idea, but I don't think it's one that would make sense for me. All right. The next question is, by the way, thank you for everyone for joining in. It looks like there's 43 people here, and that's super great. I know I did not advertise this well at all. I think I mentioned it in my update vlog like 3 weeks ago, and then that was pretty much it. And then I went to BGG Con. I woke up this morning and I said, I have a live stream today. I should figure out how to do that. So anyway, thank you for being here. All right, so back to the question. They said, I've been looking into recording playthroughs. Can you share some details into your recording setup? How many cameras do you use, etc.? Yes, I can. Actually, the quickest thing to say is that I made a time-lapse video of myself recording the full playthrough for Scythe several years ago. Now, that was before I had a studio, so I filmed it right in the middle of the kitchen of an apartment I used to live in. But in that video, you can see my filming rig, you can see the camera that I use. So I do all of this with one camera, and I'm just constantly moving it around, zooming in and zooming out. So definitely do a search to find that one. The camera that I have is a Canon Vixia. I can't remember the exact details. In fact, it's currently tucked behind a bookcase right now because I'm not filming at this point. So I can't tell you exactly what type it is, but it's a video camera and not a DSLR or anything like that. And I have it strapped to a microscope mount that looms over the table. But again, I think the best thing to do is just to watch the time lapse. Also, I think it's kind of funny seeing me move around like crazy. All right. And if you have more specific questions about cameras and stuff, honestly, and also just questions in general, you can always email me at johngetsgames@gmail.com. I try to answer everyone's emails. Sometimes it takes a week or 2 or 3, depending on how things are. But if you'd like more details about my cameras and the exact stuff I do, to NK Foofy Poof, feel free to email me. Just say, hey, I was in the live Q&A, and we'll talk more. Next person. Oh, hi, me here. He says, it was nice meeting me at BGG Con, and they hope I had a chance to play Mirage. No, it didn't happen. Me here actually taught us how to play the Magnificent at BGG Con last week, which is a game we loved. And we were chatting the next day as we were playing Alubari, and he mentioned that Barrage was great, but unfortunately at that point, we had very little time left. We were going to play Maracaibo afterwards, so at some point in the future, I do hope to try Barrage, but that one did not end up happening. All right, let's come back over here. There's a lot of people here now, so I'm trying to make sure I don't scroll too far past. And yes, so the next question from Cujo Painting is, what is the last time you played Mage Knight? That's easy. I've never played Mage Knight. I almost played Mage Knight once about 5 years ago. There's a local convention called Kubla Khan, and a friend of mine brought it, and we were going to play it, 3 players, and I can't remember the specifics, but once the time actually came to play, something came up, and it just did not end up happening. I think the 2 of the other people ended up playing it, but I needed to go do something else. I can't remember the specifics. I'm curious to try it at some point, but I have not had the opportunity since, and honestly, my game playing time is so impacted as it is, it's hard to work something like that in. All right, next question from Keith Polnick. What's your take on Dominant Species? It's one of my favorite games, very cutthroat and balanced. My take on Dominant Species is it's a super cool game that I got rid of. I owned this game a very long time ago, back in like 2011. I think I got the second printing when it came out. I can't remember the specifics. And Dominant Species, if you're not familiar with it, is a game that plays up to 6 players. You all take on the role of a species like insects or mammals or something like that, and you are trying to dominate out on a hex board, and the Ice Age is coming. So it's slowly icing out different spots, and you're trying to adapt to various food types, and it has a bit of area majority going on, but it also has a great worker placement mechanism where there are, I think, something like 18 worker placement spots. It's like a long list going down the board with worker placement spots in it, and you place your workers and you don't activate them. And then once everybody's placed all of them, you start at the top and you kind of work your way down. So it's a really cool game. I played it many times. Honestly, I'm not sure how many, and that was back before I was tracking as many of my plays. I used to have these epic board game days where we would play like Eclipse and Dominant Species, all at 6 players, because I just want to sit down and play like a 5-hour game. And I did that with Dominant Species a couple times, and I enjoyed those plays. But as time goes on, I focus on playing shorter games more often. So that's kind of my perspective on Dominant Species. I'm just trying to make sure I got the question right back there. It's really neat. I would play it again. In fact, I think I played it about a year and a half ago. I was at just a regular Monday night board game meetup, and somebody came with it, and they said, I really want to play this. And we ended up playing a 4-player game of it. And it wasn't crazy long, now that I think about it. I mean, it was probably 2 hours or a little bit more than that. But we fell into it pretty quickly. And I remember it had been like 5 years since I'd played. And all they had to do was just walk down there and just explain what they did. And I fell right back into it. And I think I might have won that game. I don't remember the specifics, and I don't really want to spend time looking up my stats for that. But yeah, Dominant Species is a really cool game. I just got rid of it because it wasn't one that I necessarily was excited to play more. It's one I would play more in the future, but I have to be really picky with the games I have on my shelf. All right, next question. I know there's a lot of them, so I'm starting to get a little bit behind here, but we can see here that David M says, are you going to GobbleCon in the Bay Area? It's a winter version of Kubla Khan. No, I never heard of that before, if I'm being honest. I've only been to Kubla Khan once. Like I said, it was 5 years ago or something like that. And I did have a good time with it, but I haven't felt motivated to go back again, specifically for that one, because it's usually on the 3-day weekend in May. I can't remember which one that is, if I'm being honest. So, obviously, that's a very hot weekend to do different things. So GobbleCon probably is around Thanksgiving, if I had to make a guess. No, I'm not planning on going to that. I didn't even know it was a thing. But maybe at some point in the future, I don't know. I really have to be careful with the amount of time I commit to going to cons, because obviously I also have a job, which is making videos and whatnot. I have to balance all these things out well. Next up, we have Auger Crusher. You are asking, do you make notes about strategies, moves that each player makes when you're playing, or do you keep it all in your head? I keep it all in my head because I'm crazy. Sometimes I consider writing some things down. There was one playthrough I did like 2 months ago or so. It was the Lucky Duck game. There's so many games, I can't remember the specifics, but it had an app integration. It was kind of an adventure style game. And since that was an app driven game that I could not go backwards in, I did actually take some notes about what the players were doing. And I did not end up doing a full playthrough of that game for a variety of reasons anyway. So it didn't end up needing to be necessary. But yeah, when I'm playing these games, I just keep it all in my head. Sometimes I forget. Sometimes that's why these things take so long, is because I'll take a player's turn and then realize, wait, I was going to do something else. I just forgot I was going to do that because I took 2 other players' turns, and more often than not, I go back and redo that player's turn to kind of match the thing that I was planning on doing. So yeah, maybe I should take notes, but it's not something I really do at this point. Next up, Board Games with Nirmas has a question. Oh, actually, no question. You're just impressed with the level of commitment I have to the videos, and you spend more time editing as you go on. And oh well, you doubt if you'll ever come to my level. Well, I appreciate that. You just have to take time, and like you said, you're taking time. The higher the quality of the video is, the more time it takes to edit, and you are obviously bumping into that. Let's see. So moving on, Calvin Cheese says they're wishing that I would do a run through of Maracaibo because there's none out there. That's not actually true. Paul Grogan, in his Gaming Rules YouTube channel, he did a live playthrough, teach and playthrough of Maracaibo a few weeks ago, and I actually watched some of that to try and get a feeling for how Maracaibo plays. So if you want to watch a playthrough of that one, you can right now. As far as a playthrough in the future, It's a possibility. I currently have access to a copy of the game. It's not my copy, but I think I will probably put it onto the voting list for the Patreon supporters. And I think if I do, there's odds are pretty good it's going to win. There's a slight chance I won't. I will not put it on the poll if I think I will not have time to be able to pull off the game. So I want to make that happen. I want to put it on the poll. I'm just not going to commit to it right now. So a playthrough of Maracaibo might happen. I can tell you right now, I've played it twice and I love it. So I would like to play it again on screen because it's a really cool game. All right, moving on. Olli Brahma says, can I ask what is the reason that you speed up your playthrough? Is it just to make the videos shorter to watch? Well, the short answer to that is I don't speed up my playthroughs. The only thing I ever speed up is when I'm like shuffling my hands, shuffling cards on screen, or maybe moving some tokens around. But if I'm talking, then that's the regular speed. This is just the speed that I talk at. I've definitely had people over the last 6 years ask me this before, like, why do you speed up your videos? And I don't. I talk fast, and I'm trying to talk less fast as time goes on. In fact, when I go back to look at some of my older videos, I'm honestly embarrassed. Like my Scythe video is my second most popular playthrough or video in general, and I talk crazy fast in that video, and I'm not really sure why. And I think it does go to show that I have slowed things down over time, slowly as I go from video to video, and over the course of a couple years, things seem slower. But yeah, I have never sped up my videos, and I certainly would never speed up my videos, considering people do complain about how fast I talk sometimes. Hi to Chris Potty from the UK. Thanks for joining in, and the other 46 people. This is fun. Let's see, we've been doing this for like 26 minutes now. I'm not really sure how long I'm going to keep talking. I was kind of expecting to do this for at least an hour, and I don't see a reason to change that. Although I probably should drink some water, or else my voice might get worse. All right. Next up, Olli Brahma says, you really like my playthrough. The Fujikoro one was epic. You told Game Brewer that the video, you talked to Game Brewer, the publisher, about that video at Essen. So thank you. I really appreciate it, actually, when people tell publishers that they like my videos, because that just makes them more likely to want to work with me. And, this is becoming a greater part of my livelihood. So yeah, it makes them feel happy too, because it makes them feel like their investment in the sponsored playthrough was a good idea, obviously. So let's move on. I know I asked for people to put question, and then I'm just reading out every single thing here, but I'm trying to pay some attention to everybody. I'm not too used to doing live stuff, so I apologize for the not standard John Gets Games level of quality that's going on here. Let's see here. Chris Potty says, what is the game that you have played the most just for fun? Probably Gloomhaven, considering I've played that game about 30 times at this point. That's a lot more than I had played when I did my playthrough and my review. So that one got a lot of plays, although it's hard to actually get it to the table these days, just for logistics with my friends. Let's see here. Moving on. Hello to Kamil in Morocco, and Keith Pollack, you have another question. Are you going to ever show a video or pictures of your collection? I thought that would be interesting to see, and you love the content. Well, thank you. Well, I used to do my vlogs in front of my wall of games. Back when I lived in an apartment and I didn't really have a studio and I would film on my kitchen table. When I did vlogs, I figured it was slightly more interesting to be in front of the wall of games. When we bought this house, we moved the game collection in, and I did do one vlog in front of the wall of games, and this house is just so echoey that the audio sounded terrible. So at that point, I started doing vlogs here in my studio with the standard setup, and that doesn't mean the wall of games is gone. I could take a photo and post it. I'm not really against that. I actually have my collection as up to date as possible on Board Game Geek. My username is Happy Hexagon. That's one word: HappyHexagon, and you can see my collection right there. I try to keep that as up to date as possible. All right, moving on. Which board game convention in the U.S. would you recommend for a first-time attendee to board game conventions? Well, I have been to Gen Con once. I've been to Origins once. I've been to Board Game Geek Con in November 6 times now, and Kubla Khan once. So obviously my experience set is not high. Oh, technically I've been to Gamma 3 times now, but that's more of an industry insider convention. So I want to say Board Game Geek Con, and I think a big reason for that is just because I've been there 6 times, so it's the one I'm most familiar with. It really depends on what you're looking to do. If you are trying to go to a board game convention just to buy the hottest games, then probably Gen Con is the right call, but it is a crazy convention. There are a lot of people there, and you do play games. Like I was able to play some games with friends there, but it is not a playing games type convention. It's a get games convention that happens to have some game playing. Versus Board Game Geek Con, you can get some games, but it's all about playing games, and board games are about being played. So that's part of the reason I love that convention so much. And I think it's a really welcoming, easygoing atmosphere. You're not going to have a crushing wall of people trying to get to something or the other. The line to get your registration can be a bit long on the first day, but I got into it an hour before registration started, and I think I got my badge like 20 minutes after they actually open the doors. So it's not a intimidating show at all. So I recommend Board Game Geek Con, specifically the one in November, because that's the one I've been to. But from what I've heard, the BGG Spring Convention is essentially the same thing, just 6 months out. So whichever one of those makes more sense to you, I would recommend, although I cannot authoritatively say that because I've only been to so few. All right, David M. asks, have I played Skytopia or Aquatica? Both are new from Cosmodrome. Yes, I played Aquatica twice at Board Game Geek Con last week. I played it a second time because I liked the first play so much. I have, I think, 25 new games that I played over the last week at Board Game Geek Con that I am going to be talking about in impressions vlogs that I will be filming once my voice kind of corrects itself, so maybe tomorrow, and that's just a lot of games to talk about. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do it, but I will talk about Aquatica. I did not try Skytopia, but Cosmodrome did reach out to me, and so they might be actually sending me a copy of both. So I do hope to have a chance to try that one at some point. But I can tell you the short answer on Aquatica is it's really fun. I really quite enjoyed it. It's got a Concordia hand building mechanism. It's got a cool combo-y location rising system. It's a really neat game, and I've enjoyed both of my plays, and I do hope to play it more. All right. Purple Sucks says, what are your thoughts on viticulture and Tuscany? I'm not sure what the EE stands for. He said viticulture EE and Tuscany EE. Now these are, I believe Tuscany was an expansion to viticulture, which is a Stonemaier Games game. And my thoughts on it are, I'd like to play it someday. I actually have one of my close friends owns it, and I have witnessed him playing viticulture probably 6 times, but every time that game comes out, it's when I'm playing something else. So I'm not like crazy excited to play it, but at some point I'd like to give it a shot. And it's, there within my friend group. It just hasn't actually happened. So I don't really have anything else to say about that. All right, Shannon Berry says, first, I just want to say you're my absolute favorite content creator. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. Have you ever participated in the Jack Vassal Memorial Fund auction? No, I haven't. And that's largely because it just hasn't really occurred to me. I've been kind of adjacent to that over the years. I remember when the very first one of these happened, like 9 years ago or so. I think it's a great idea. I don't really know much more about that, or more about it than that. I know that it's an auction where a large variety of things are auctioned off, and all of the proceeds go to this fund, which I believe is used to give money to board gaming families in a moment of need. And that's all I know about it. So I can't actually vet it or anything, but it does seem to be pretty well loved by a lot of people. So I guess I don't really have an excuse. Maybe I should look into it a little bit more, but that's really all I have to say about it. Pirax says he loves my content from Germany, or they do. I appreciate that. Jake Bristow has a question. Can you say hi to my friend Callum? He loves your channel. Hi, Callum. Thank you for watching. Hey, no pun included. Any plans on going to England next year? So that would be Efka or Elaine from the No Pun Included YouTube channel, and they are 2 of the coolest humans out there. Really good friends of mine, and I don't think I have plans on going to England next year. It would be great to hang out, and it was a bummer that we weren't able to hang out at Essen this year. But I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to next year at some point. But England is a long way away, and that's not something that's going to happen all that often. Sorry. Joe Robert has a question. You purge a lot of games. How much room and how many games do you have on your shelf normally? Well, I have a standard Calyx 5x5 bookshelf, although technically it's an Expedit because I've had this one for 11 years now. I first bought this before I owned a single board game. I just thought it was a cool way to hold my books. I kind of attached my desk to it when I had a tiny little room in an apartment. And then when I bought board games, I was like, wow, these fit really well. And it's kind of funny that it's actually like one of the standard board game carrying bookshelves before I even knew that modern board gaming existed. So I have a 5x5 one of those. And in addition to that, I have a small shelf section that can kind of hold my small games a little bit better. And that is what I try to keep my collection to. I think at full capacity, on average, it holds at about 250 games, about something like that. And I really try to not expand out beyond that because honestly, I forget what some of my games are within this collection size. Sometimes I go to other people's houses who have collections that are 2 to 3 times bigger than mine, and I feel a little bit of of a pang, like I wish I had board games walling every single wall of the room that we play board games in. That would be so cool. But at the same time, that's just so many board games. I'd be hard pressed to play all of the games I own right now, let alone all of those other ones. So I can say that as time goes on, the purge is getting harder because I think my collection is getting better and better. I do obviously play some games once or twice and then get rid of them, but you know, this is not a forever plan. I guess it's just a medium run plan. At some point, if I keep doing this for 10 or 15 more years, I think I would probably have too many games that I love too much to get rid of than would fit in this bookshelf section. So maybe I'll expand it out a little bit at some point in the future. But right now, I like keeping it where it is. It keeps me honest with the games that I have, and it stops me from being a collector and forces me to keep the games that I really actually want to play. All right, let's move on. Thank you to lots of people who are saying really nice things to me. I'm trying not to read it all out on video. Nigel Graves has a question. Has an expansion ever made you reconsider your opinion of the game you did not originally like? So this is a great question, and I was worried that people would start asking me questions about specific games like this because it's really hard to recall examples and moments like this. I mean, I guess I could talk about expansions a little bit. In general, my opinion of expansions is when it comes to take it or leave them, I usually leave them. I generally don't buy expansions because generally they add complexity to games that did not necessarily need it. More often than not, when I do buy expansion, I keep saying I'm going to play the game again, and I never do. And then I see that game on the shelf and I'm like, I should really play that with the expansion, but now I need to relearn how all of that stuff works. And then you're probably teaching it to new players anyway, because I very rarely play a game that everyone knows right at the start. I'm pretty much every time I play a game, in almost every setting, I have to teach whatever that game is to at least one person around the table. And that just makes expansions hard. I can tell you that the expansion, the Norwegian's expansion to A Feast for Odin, made me go from liking the game a lot to loving it and considering it one of the best games I've ever played. So that definitely made A Feast for Odin significantly better. And I can also say the expansion to Concordia, the Venus expansion specifically, made Concordia into a leveled up beast. I mean, what an amazing game the Concordia Venus is. I already love Concordia, but playing Concordia as a partnership game is so much more than the sum of its parts, and I talk about that at great length in several videos last year, specifically in my top 10 of 2018 video, where I think I said that was my number one game. I can't remember the specifics. It was at least one of the top ones. So as far as like as an expansion made me like a game I did not like originally, it's possible that's happened, but if I'm being honest, if I didn't like the game originally, it's likely I would have rather played something else than try to play a game to see if an expansion fixed it. All right. Next question. Have you ever played the Spirit Island expansion? If yes, what is your... I'm not sure what the last word was going to be, but I imagine you're curious what my opinion of it is. I do have the Spirit Island expansion. It's on my shelf, and I've never played it. Spirit Island is a brilliant game, and I just talked about expansions a little bit, this is kind of the same case where every time I sit down to play Spirit Island, which is rare, I would love to play it more, but honestly, it's not happened that often. It's been at least a year and a half. I usually have to teach the whole game to at least one person, so bringing in an expansion, which I'm not even that familiar with, just hasn't happened. So I've heard great things about it. Obviously, having more spirits to play as is awesome. It's probably a great expansion, but I've not actually done it. All right. Let's move on to... Oh, opinion. What's my opinion? Sorry, I hope that answered your question there. Next question. Hey, John, thanks for doing a playthrough of Terramara recently. Considering the designers behind it, I'm surprised it hasn't gotten more coverage on YouTube, but it seems like you really enjoyed it. Yeah, I really did enjoy it, and yeah, I'm pretty surprised that one flew under the radar. So I was paid to make a video for it, so I always like to say that before I give my opinion because it's impossible to be completely unbiased about something you made money on. But I do think Terramara is a really good game. There was one copy of it in the hot games room at BGG Con, and it was pretty much always occupied, so that was nice to see. I'm not sure if people liked it as they were playing it, but I hope they did because it's a really neat game. I think there's just a lot of games coming out, and it's really hard for some of them to make a splash. And it's kind of sad to say, but the fact that it did not go on Kickstarter means it probably had a little bit less hype overall. It was going to be on Kickstarter originally, but then it went straight to release. And just because a game doesn't go on Kickstarter doesn't mean it's not going to get a hype session. But it does seem like some games like that one, and also Trismegistus is a similar situation. I have not played it, but it has great designer pedigree, and no one's really talking about it that much. And I think it just goes to show how many games are coming out. It's really hard to break through. All right, next question. Will you do a top 10 of 2019 on December or January? I think so. I think it's likely. It certainly won't be in December. It certainly won't be in January. If I do one, it'll probably be more like March, because I do like to actually try to play as many of these games as possible. I did not actually go to Spiel this year, which means I have a lot less of these hot new games in my collection. So I tried to play a lot of them at BGG Con last week. And I do enjoy doing top 10 lists of the year. It's kind of fun to match all this stuff up. So I hope to do one. Maybe it'll be more like February. I can't promise that it'll happen, but I hope to. All right. Let's move on to to Jessica Longhurst. I don't hear Puffin barking. Where is she? Puffin is in the room with me. Puffin is our dog, and she has stopped barking. So I don't think I want to poke her at the moment. If she wakes up, then maybe she'll make it on camera. But for the moment, she's nice and calm. All right, let's move on to next question. Is there a type of player, AP, extremely competitive or rules lawyer, that you don't enjoy playing games with? I don't think I enjoy playing games with an extreme version of any of those types of players. As far as one that sticks out in particular, I think extremely competitive is not very welcoming. I like playing games to have fun. I don't necessarily play games to always win. I mean, I'm always trying to win, but winning is a side product to having fun. I want to have fun and then also win. And if I'm playing a game with somebody who's so competitive, and also this oftentimes goes hand in hand with being a rules lawyer, where they kind of bring down the gaming situation, I just don't like that. For instance, I like to play with gimmies in games where if you do something, you play a turn and somebody else takes a turn and you realize you made a stupid mistake, I just ask the table, like, would everyone be okay if I did this instead of this? And in the gaming groups that I play with, the answer is usually yes. And I say usually because we usually only ask for gimmies when it's pretty obvious that everyone will be okay with it. If you just drew two cards and then wanted a gimme, well, that's not right. You have new information. So as long as new information hasn't presented itself, I like having those. And you oftentimes will run into issues with people who are extremely competitive with things like gimmies because they want everything to be just right. And honestly, the reason I like gimmies is because it helps reduce the analysis paralysis of some people, because they figure if you have to be perfect with every one of your moves, then you might take too long to play. AP can be annoying to have around the table, but it never kills the mood for me overall, because it's not really a personality disjoint. It's more just like somebody taking longer than I'd like to take their turn. But if somebody's overly competitive or whatnot, that can really be a bummer to everyone around the table. And again, I like to win, but the goal is to have a fun social experience first, and then obviously have the competitiveness come into play. All right, next question. The heck is Vegin and Auf der Waltz? Okay. I tweeted this morning that my biggest regret about Board Game Geek Con was not playing these two games. Now, they're both German name games. In fact, I looked it up, and I'm pretty sure Vegin is supposed to be pronounced Vain or something like that, like Vaine kind of thing. And Auf der Waltz is a German game which stands for on the road. Vegin, I'm just going to say Vegin. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it right. I'm sorry. Let's try. Vain. I'll call it Vain. It's a game where you are trying to move an ox cart around southern Denmark and northern Germany, trying to buy goods and sell goods. And when you sell things in Denmark, you sell them for kroners. And when you sell things in Germany, you sell them for thalers, which are two different currencies, of course, and the relative value of these currencies fluctuates as the game goes on. So it just seemed like a cool game of trying to, get stuff and sell stuff at the right moment when currencies are fluctuating. It looked like a neat game, and I was really expecting them to have a copy at Board Game Con, but they didn't. I don't actually remember the name of the publisher, but I remember walking by a table of it being played, or at least demoed, at Essen last year, and it was released this year, so maybe at some point I'll get to try it. Yeah, sorry about that. I was talking and I looked over and I saw YouTube saying connection problem, and so I am not experienced with live stuff very much, so I stopped the stream and turned it back on again, and it looks like that fixed it. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Where was I? I was talking about After Walls, probably a little bit too much. They're cool They're cool looking German games that I want to try. All right. Cool. Yeah, sorry about that, everyone. I have no idea what was going on there. But okay, let's move on to the next question. Any new series coming to the channel in 2020? Carlos D loves my content. At the moment, I have no plans. I'm doing what I'm doing. I do quite a bit of stuff already, I think, with vlogs for the impressions on the games I make, the playthroughs. Obviously, I have the game radar where I talk about new games I learn about. I figure I have enough content at the moment. If something comes to me, then I certainly might try. But honestly, at this point, my plan is just to try and do what I do already, but maybe more efficiently, to try and keep the ball rolling as well as possible. All right. Next question is, what was your favorite game you played at BGG Con? Great question. I was expecting somebody to ask this one earlier, if I'm being honest. So I played 25 new games at BGG Con, and it's tough to say what the best game was. I can tell you what the top 3 are. Maracaibo, Marco Polo 2, and The Magnificent. I do think that Maracaibo has a slight lead, so I guess if I had to pick a favorite, it would be Maracaibo. All 3 of these are medium to heavy-ish weight Euro games that do a variety of different things. I guess The Magnificent and Marco Polo 2 both use dice, but they use them in very different ways, and I will talk at great length about my impressions of these games when I do my impressions vlogs, which should hopefully be recorded at some point in the next week or so. So I'm not going to take a long time to talk about that right now, but I can say that all 3 of those games were absolutely excellent. I mentioned that Aquatica was also very good, and there was this game called Die Crew, which I guess means the crew in German, and it was kind of like the surprise of the con for a lot of people. It was a game I'd never heard of. It's a German-only release right now from Cosmos, and it's a fully cooperative trick-taking game. Kind of like Spades and whatnot, and it's themed after people, astronauts in space. So you're trying to essentially play through a trick-taking hand, but have specific goals in mind. Like this player has to win this specific card in a trick, otherwise we all lose. Or certain cards have to be won in a specific order, or that kind of thing. So it was a really neat experience, and it's one I would certainly like to try again. And it's one that I did not have any buzz going into the convention, but it seemed like people were playing it a lot. In fact, at some point halfway through BGG Con, one board game was taken out of the Hot Games room, and a copy of Die Crew came in, and it was never not played from that point on, it seemed like. All right, next question. Are you a 49er fan? 49ers are a local football team from San Francisco, which is close to where I am. And no, I'm not a fan of any sports, really, unless you call Hearthstone a sport, because I watch competitive Hearthstone. That's something I'm really into, but that's a video game, so that's esports. It's a little bit different. Pirax has a question. Don't you wish you were playing Kalimal right now? Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I suppose. I mean, I'm enjoying this. This is fun. I haven't done a live Q&A in a while, and I think it's going relatively well. So I think, obviously, I do like playing games, and I keep mentioning that I would like to play Kalimal again. It's such a good game. I feel guilty about all of the games that I have on my shelf that have not actually been played, that publishers sent to me for free. So that's a big part of why, old favorites like Kalimal aren't getting played that much. I say old favorites. The game is 3 years old, but it is really good, and it's not going anywhere. So I know at some point in the future I will be happily playing Kalimal, but obviously that's not right now. Ogre Crusher has a question. Have you ever played any Splotter games? They seem like your kind of thing, but I've never heard you mention them. Yeah, I have. I have played at least 2. So I've played Food Chain Magnate, and I have played Antiquity, and I think that's it. I know there are a bunch more. I would love to try Roads and Boats at some point. But speaking of those 2, I played Antiquity once, and this was probably in 2012, maybe 2011, something like that. It was a long time ago, and it was a cool game. It's a civilization kind of game, although on a slightly smaller scale. And you are just building out your area. And the way resources work in this game, or at least harvesting, is you have these stacks of these tiny little chits. You need like tweezers to pick them up and put them down. And it has this great system where as you harvest resources, whether that be one resource or another, you actually start to pollute the land around your city. So you actually have to keep expanding out because this pollution is just infecting everything. Even though this is set in like the Middle Ages, which is not a time you generally consider pollution to be a thing. I think in this case they probably just they don't mean smog, they mean other types of pollution. Also in that game, as people die, you have to actually put graveyards inside your city, and there's this kind of Tetris-y thing going on, kind of like a Feast for Odin, but a long time before a Feast for Odin. I enjoyed playing that a long time ago. It was somebody else's copy, and I've never played it since. And I did play Food Chain Magnate twice, and that is a fascinating game that I don't think I want to play anymore. It's just a little bit too consequential and cutthroat for my taste. That's a game about running a food chain franchise, and in that game you're making like hot dogs or hamburgers or beer, and you set your prices as well. And it's the type of game where you can have this great plan for the round, and then you start activating your going through the round doing your plan, and suddenly an opponent of yours prices their pizza $1 less than your pizza, which means all of their pizza sells and your pizza rots. And that is a very consequential moment that you probably should have played around, but that's the kind of thing that happened in the two games that I played. So I played it a second time because I was quite interested in it, and I would not hard pass on playing it again. It's just not what I'm super interested in. So I'm curious to try Bus at some point. I'm not against smaller games in general. They do seem pretty cool, and I do like try Euros. It's true. So I will continue to pay attention to them, and maybe I'll have a chance to try some more later. Nigel Graves has a question. Let's see here. Have you ever been asked to film a game and couldn't because the rules were so badly written you couldn't figure out how to play the game? Yes, maybe. That's hard to answer. I've certainly received some games that were very rough to figure out, and I've gone back and forth with rules questions with the publisher until I finally hammered it out, and that's happened honestly more often than I'd particularly like. I think I can't actually think of a specific case. So I said yes earlier, but I'm not really sure. I know that there was a game that I was going to do a Kickstarter playthrough for a million years ago, like way before I was charging for this stuff, and I thought the game was so bad that I sent it back to them. And honestly, I'm not trying to hide their identity. It was a first-time publisher, first-time designer. I don't even remember the name of the game. It was just obviously that they had designed this game in an echo chamber, and the moment it left that echo chamber, it just fell flat on its face. And I said yes to making the video when I read the rules originally because I thought it sounded cool. So it wasn't the rules that were at issue, it was more just the reality of how bad the game was compared to what the rulebook kind of promised in that case. But again, I don't even remember what the game was, and I don't think it ever actually went to Kickstarter. I think I probably was not the only person whose feedback was not super positive to that person, unfortunately. I tried to be very polite about it. I honestly felt terrible, and I offered to pay to ship the game to somebody else. I just told them I just didn't think it was a good match for the channel, and I strive very hard to try and say yes to games that will be good for the channel as much as possible. All right, next question. What is your favorite theme in games? My favorite theme in games is great mechanics. Which I know is a stupid cop-out answer. I don't really care about theme in games, if I'm being totally honest, and that's kind of why I said it like that. You could be, Vikings, or you could be space robbers, or whatever. As long as the mechanics of what I'm doing are interesting, then that's fine to me. I don't need narrative experiences in my games to feel connected to the things that I'm doing, because I'm just that type of board gamer. I don't mind themes. In fact, I think odd, strange themes are certainly interesting. There was a game I did not play at BGG Con, but I saw being played, and I wanted to play, about eating psychedelic mushrooms. And the way that worked is you put these tinged glasses on, and you would look at different cards, and depending on what color glasses you put on, you would see different things in the cards. So maybe you'd have like a good trip, or like a bad trip where you saw awful things on the cards. I think, like, what a cool theme. So I guess in that case, that theme would have brought me towards trying to play the game a little bit more. But honestly, the mechanics of, with the glasses and everything also were a big factor in why I was interested in trying that game, which I did not end up playing, and I don't actually remember the name to. Sorry. So I guess a slightly better answer to your question of what theme is my favorite is maybe a theme that lends itself to interesting and unusual mechanics. Like that's definitely something that will draw me in. I know it's a bit of a catch-all answer. I apologize about that. I guess if I was to specifically answer your question about what theme I like the most, even though it's not a particular factor for me, um, I don't know. Maybe space. I do like space stuff. I was a huge hard sci-fi nerd as far as books and whatnot are concerned when I was a kid. So I have a soft spot in my heart for hard sci-fi type themes. So I guess if I had to pick a favorite, that would be a slight favorite. Although it's really not a big factor in my my game choosing. All right, I've reached the part in the questions where the stream dropped out. Let's see here. Let's move on. Board Games with Nirmas got to play the crew at Spiel and thought it was really cool. Yeah, I also thought it was super cool. All right, so next question from Niramas. Have you played Keyforge? No, I haven't, and that's not for a lack of interest. Keyforge is a card game that came out at Gen Con 2 Gen Cons ago, I think, where you actually buy a unique deck of cards. Well, the cards are, there's a specific set of cards, like 130 cards, and each deck gets a different shuffling in of these cards, and then they have custom backs and everything, and you play it out. It's designed by Richard Garfield, who designed Magic the Gathering, and it looks neat. I have been interested in trying it ever since I first heard about it. From the very first time I heard about it, I said, that sounds cool, and I just have not had the opportunity, so maybe at some point I will. All right. Ro Sue has a question. What do you think about King's Dilemma? I don't know anything about that game, if I'm being honest. I saw it on the shelf in the hot games room at BGG Con, but I did not really even give it a second passing thought. There's just so many games to play. That's one that I do not have any real familiarity with. All right. Oh, we've just hit an hour. I did say I was going to be talking for at least an hour, and my voice is doing pretty well, and there's still 40 people here, so I don't know when I'm going to stop, but let's keep going. So, the next question from David M. Architects or Paladins, question mark. So I am making a educated guess that David M. is talking about the Valyria games. Wait, are those Valyria games? Let's see here. My brain is falling out of my head at this point. That's let's see, Paladins. The West Kingdom, is it like Architects of the West Kingdom and Paladins of the West Kingdom? I think that's from the Valyria people. Anyway, I have played Architects and I've not played Paladins, so I can't really compare the two. Architects is a game where you are doing some worker placement, where the more workers you put into a spot, the more powerful the action is, but you only put one worker out at a time, so you kind of have to build those things up over time. And I thought it was pretty cool, but I haven't gotten back to it. I've seen Paladins being played. I've not had an opportunity to play it. It looks pretty neat though, so I don't really have too much to say about that one. All right, next question from Kevin R. Let's see here. For games that you purchase with your own money, where do you usually buy games? Like conventions, Miniature Market, Cool Stuff Inc., Amazon, etc. It's mostly Amazon, if I'm being honest. Amazon is just easier. I have Prime. I know they are a not the best company in the world, and so that's something I definitely consider at times. Although, honestly, these days, I very rarely buy games, so if I'm going to buy a game, it's probably because it's hard to find. So in that case, it might be Amazon.de because it's coming in from Germany, or sometimes it's just direct from the publisher. So I guess I've certainly had several Cool Stuff Inc. orders over the years with a mixed amount of success. Sometimes it seems like the pre-orders take a long time to fill, which will kind of back up an entire order. So back when that used to matter to me more, it could be pretty frustrating, which is probably the reason why I usually fell to just using Amazon because it was easier. Next question. Oh, that was a double question. Let's see here. Red Eye Ghost played Bus for the first time on Friday, and they thought it was fantastic and very quick. It's for a Splotter game, it's not dry. Yeah, so I mentioned that when we were discussing Splotter games before. It looks neat. I have not played it. I know that you can. It's all about like moving people around with buses, and you can stop time, which is a little bit strange. It looks kooky, and I do hope to try it at some point. All right. Thank you for again to all of the people who are thanking me for the channel. I really do appreciate it. I really do. Charlie Fisher asks, "How old am I?" I am 35 at the moment. I'll be 36 soon. That was an easy question to answer. Let's see here. In a board game culture of new, do you think the golden age of board games will end soon or continue to grow? I don't know. I don't know. That's such a hard question to answer. I mean, especially considering, you know, such a vague idea of the golden age of board gaming. It seems like things are continuing to get better as time goes on. I don't know, better is a weird statement. Things are getting more interesting as time goes on. Sure, it might sometimes take a year or two for something really big to come into play, but like a Gloomhaven comes around relatively rarely, and a Pandemic Legacy comes around relatively rarely. But the iterations on previous ideas can be so fascinating. Um, and I don't know. It seems like, from what I can tell, not having researched this really at all, but from what I've been, the numbers I've been adjacent to, it seems like the board game industry is growing really quickly. Specifically, people who don't know that modern board gaming is a thing are finding out that modern board gaming is a thing at a quicker and quicker rate. I guess, people used to think of board games as things that kids do, and now they're realizing that it's things that adults can do, and it's a great excuse to meet, to hang out with the people they like. And so, as far as I can tell, things are continuing to go up from like a number of games that are purchased each year perspective. So I think in that respect, the golden age of board games is still going strong. As far as Cult of the New and the amount of new titles that are coming out, at some point, maybe it really will become a problem. I really don't know. I'm not really in the prediction business, if I'm being honest. I'm certainly enjoying it. I do I do really love playing new games. Actually, hold on one second. I'm going to run out of the room. I'll be back in about 12 seconds. Okay. The heater turned on, and it's a bit loud, so I wanted to turn that off so that it did not get in the way of the video. All right, where are we at? If you had to play Monopoly, which of all strange Monopoly versions would you play? I today read news that there's a longest game ever Monopoly version. Yeah, that sounds awful. I mean, I'm not necessarily one of those people who is like, Monopoly is the worst game in the world. I honestly haven't played it since I was a kid, so it's hard to have an objective adult opinion on the game. If I was to sit down and play it, I don't know, I'd probably just want to play the original again to see how it fares. Especially, I'd read the rules and make sure we were actually playing the rules correctly, as opposed to, the house rules that everybody has come up with over the years. So I guess that would probably be my answer. All right. Well, to answer that question, I do not play Monopoly. No, at least not in the last 25 years or so. Keith R asks, do I play many games with my spouse and family? Yeah, my wife has liked games for a long time, since long before we actually met. And we've played a lot of games together. I track all of my plays, and it seems like more often than not at the end of the year, Jessica is the person that I play the most games with, although we very rarely play two-player games. We enjoy doing other things, and like, there's a lot of TV shows we like and whatnot, so more often than not, we would rather do something like that when it's just the two of us. But when we have game nights and whatnot, we tend to play games together quite a bit. As far as my family is concerned, not a ton. My mom loves the idea of playing games with me, but I have to obviously find games that are a good weight, and usually I have to find something that's really quite light overall. I know I successfully played Quirkle with a lot of people in my family, and that's just a really good game in general. So I do enjoy trying to play games with the family. When we go to like the Christmas holidays and whatnot, I usually try to bring a small game or two, and sometimes they get played, sometimes they don't. My dad has zero interest in ever playing any game, but my sister and her husband also occasionally play games, but they have a couple small kids, so it doesn't really happen that often. Nigel Graves asks, oh, that's interesting. Sorry to butt in right there. There's 53 people watching. That's actually the most it has been, and we've been going on for over an hour, so thank you for watching, everyone. Nigel Graves says, when you started the channel, was there any content creator that influenced you and your format style more than others? Yeah. Sorry. There's a really easy answer to that, and it's Rado. Without him, this channel would not exist at all. Rado runs through, he's been doing this stuff since about 2011. I was a fan of his channel because I really enjoyed watching playthroughs, and it was actually a Kickstarter campaign of his, like I think his third Kickstarter campaign or fourth, I can't remember the specifics, where he mentioned that he started by just being bored and pulled out his, actually no, for him, there was a rules question, or somebody wrote a post online about Helvetia, I think, about issue with the game or something, or the game wasn't good. He wanted to prove it by making a video showing that the game was good, and he kind of went from there. And I remember reading that, and I said, I'm really bored, and I have a phone in my pocket. I could just make reviews of stuff. Like, he really inspired me to pull my phone out of my pocket and make my first review, which was for Tuluva, and the rest is kind of history from that perspective. Also, Rado is the reason that I make playthroughs, because I really liked his run-throughs, but I was always frustrated that he didn't finish playing the games, and that his unedited style could sometimes be a little bit slow to get going. So I remember thinking to myself, how hard could it actually be to do this with like playing the full game and editing out all of the gaps? And because of that, I pulled out my phone and I did one of those. And I realized I actually quite enjoy making these things. I also found out that it's really hard. It's a lot of work. There's a very good reason why Rado doesn't do it and why most people don't do it. But yeah, Rado is, a big driving force in a lot of these ways. He's part of the reason why I don't make reviews anymore. I remember hearing him talk about, feeling like, with his final thoughts, that he's at times said he kind of wished maybe he did not do final thoughts because people focus on those so much and they don't focus on the game itself. And I remember hearing that and thinking, well, I know he could probably just stop making them if he wanted to, but that's his decision. And then I remember sitting there thinking, I actually don't like making reviews. Maybe I should stop doing that too. So yeah, Rado has been a very important mover in a lot of the different decisions that have created this channel and also turned this channel into what it is. And I really cannot thank him enough for that. And I'm still a fan. I still watch, I still pay attention to all of his videos. I don't watch all of them because I don't have that much time anymore, but his stuff is really great. All right. What was the first modern game that brought you into the hobby? I'm one of the many people who was brought in by Settlers of Catan. I had heard of it over the years, when I was in college, back from like 2002 to 2006. I remember hearing whispers of it, and I remember thinking, oh, that'd be fun to play like a new board game. Like, people do that? That's crazy. But I was obsessed with video games and World of Warcraft and all that kind of stuff back then, so it didn't really enter my worldview. But then in 2009, early 2009, due to a variety of boring story reasons, I found myself at a party with people I didn't know who mentioned that they played Settlers of Catan almost every week. And I remember saying, oh, that's cool. I've heard about this game like over the years. Like, is it fun? And they said, yeah. And I said, can I play? And they said, yeah. So they invited me to play. And that was just it for me. Like, I played it that first time and I was like, this is amazing. And then I proceeded to play Settlers with them almost every week for a full year. At some point, like 7 months in, I found out about Board Game Geek because I was just Googling Settlers of Catan, like, how could I get my own copy? From Board Game Geek, I found out that expansions to board games exist, and I actually bought the Cities and Knights expansion and gave it to my friend who owned the base game so that we could all play that together, and then we proceeded to play Cities and Knights every single week for a long time. So I've played a lot of Settlers of Catan in my life, like, I don't know, at least 40 plus games over the course of those years. So that game definitely brought me into the hobby. I have a soft spot in my heart for it. It's still in my collection. I don't even know if I'm ever going to play it again, but I think I'm probably going to always keep that one because it is what brought me in. Let's see here. Next question. How is your puppy? The puppy is doing great. Let's see. I'm actually going to poke over and see if she's awake. Okay, here we go. Yeah, she was just sitting over there, so I figured maybe I'll put her cute little face on screen. She's doing great. She is 9 months old now. She is just such a wonderful dog, and she's just politely sitting on her bed just on the other side of there while I'm recording. Honestly, she's in here with me most days now, so I don't really have too much else to say besides the fact that she is just such a wonderful dog. And she's my first dog ever, and it's been a really cool experience with her. So until she wants to move, maybe we can move on here. What's the next question? Have you played Western Legends, and if you have, did you like it? What part in particular? Yes, I did play Western Legends, and I think Puffin wants to get down already, so here you go, baby. And honestly, I remember enjoying it, but the best thing that you can do is just do a quick search for John Gets Games Impressions Vlog Western Legends, because I talked about it quite a bit, and this was a while ago. So yeah, definitely give that a shot. It probably doesn't make sense for me to talk about it now because I've played so many games between then and now. All right, next question. Do I prefer conventions, Board Game Geek Con, Gen Con, PAX, etc.? Well, Board Game Geek Con is my favorite convention. I've been there 6 times, and that's because it's just about playing games, and playing board games is one of my favorite things to do in life. The other conventions you can play games at, but they're a little bit more about the community, about meetups, and about acquiring games. So as far as just straight up playing games, yeah, Board Game Geek Con is still my favorite, and I don't really see that changing. Yeah, it's amazing. All right. Is there any game that turned out to be a huge disappointment for you? Yeah, I'm sure there have been. Like many people who have played a lot of games, it's sometimes hard to specifically call to memory exactly. Oh, got a coughing dog over there. What those were. Honestly, I'd have to look it up. Like it'd be a bit boring as I'm typing through. I should just have like a list of this because this does come up sometimes. I'm not really sure what those are. If I think of any as I'm continuing to go through this live Q&A, I will bring it up, I promise. Let's see here. Ogre Crusher says, do you appreciate corrections on small issues in your videos? Sometimes I feel like I'm being annoying, but I'm a perfectionist. I super appreciate it. And yes, Ogre Crusher, your name is very familiar to me because, yeah, you comment quite often when I make mistakes, and I appreciate it. You know, YouTube lets me put in those Klingon subtitles to put corrections, and I know that most people don't turn the Klingon subtitles on, but I like the fact that I can put corrections in, and if people like you did not notice the problems that I have, then those corrections wouldn't happen. So I really do appreciate it. It's only annoying when people are annoying about it. You know, people are, you know, positive about it and, you know, just like, let me know what the problem is, and that's great. But sometimes people can be a bit condescending, and those are the comments that I certainly do not appreciate. All right. Let's move on to Charlie Fisher. Do you appreciate do you appreciate corrections on small issues on your videos? Sometimes I feel confused. Oh, that's funny. That's essentially the same question back to back, so I guess I answered that one twice. Let's see here. Just moving on to the next question from David M. There was a guy named Michael Weissner, yeah, who used to do playthroughs. Your style reminds me of his. He does not seem to be as active. Yes, he how do I put this? So I mentioned Rado was kind of like, you know, a muse in some way for the different changes that have happened to this channel. But Michael Wissner is the reason that I wanted to make playthroughs because his playthroughs were amazing. I remember his playthrough for A Feast for Odin got me so excited about the game. His style was exactly my style, and I just kind of straight up copied him to a certain extent. Now, I know that I said that, you know, I was kind of trying to make my playthroughs in a way that Rado didn't, but it was more like, you know, how hard could it be to do these more consistently? And yeah, his YouTube channel is called Miwi, I think, and I don't think he's made made a video for years because it is hard, and it was not a job for him in any way. His videos really were brilliant, and I wish he was doing it more. And to a certain extent, I'm kind of filling in a gap in the overall board game video market that he left open even back then because he did not put that many videos out because, of course, he had a life and whatnot, and I did too, but with my old work schedule, obviously, things can be a bit funny. The next question is, do you have a favorite board game author or maybe a few? Um, I don't have a specific favorite board game designer. There certainly are some designers out there who've made lots of games I like. Stefan Feld has made many games that I quite enjoy. Uwe Rosenberg, Alexander Pfister. All of these are very popular Euro game designers, so I'm not really breaking any new ground here by saying them, but I do like a good medium and sometimes heavyweight Euro, and so some of the heavy hitters from the overall genre definitely are there. I used to consider myself a bit of a Carl Chudik fan because of innovation, um, and I think over the years, and Glory to Rome, which I own the original funny art version of, but over time I've found I've kind of drifted away from his designs as I keep trying the new ones. It's not really my jam as much as it used to be because I've been playing modern board games for a decade now, and obviously tastes can sort of change over time. All right, next question is what game? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Hold on a second. The dog is starting to get a little bit antsy. Okay, I think this is probably actually going to be a good time for me to wrap this up. It's time to go let Puffin out. So I think this will bring this to a close. I will note the questions that just got asked here, and I'm going to let her out real quick before I finish this up, actually. All right. So it looks like the questions that I missed came from just a couple of people, but I'm going to wrap this one up and pay attention to the dog. I've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, And I think, yeah, this is a good moment. So thank you, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'm now going to go and walk the dog. Bye. As always, I'd like to thank everyone who's been supporting this channel, including all of these producer-level Patreon backers. If you too would like to directly support the channel and the creation of videos like this one, then please go to johngetsgames.com/support to see a variety of ways with which you could do that. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please click the like button down below as well as the subscribe button for the channel. Thanks for watching.